What up? We're going to get started with World Creator, but first I want to give a shout out to my homie Juan Martinez out of Santiago, Chile. He's the one that helped me out with the sand dunes and World Creator. It gave me a few tips here, which I'm going to share with you guys. And so to get started, I'm going to make my terrain width and length over here. Let's do 4096 by 4096, just to make it a little bit larger. And then I'm going to come over to my filters and add a layer. And now under filters, hit add. And I'm going to start by, I think it's under erosion. Yep. So I'm going to go to basic erosion and click on wind to kind of smooth everything out. And just a caveat for you guys, I'm using World Creator, the latest one, 2.2. And so this is the one that just came out last week. And so I put a wind deformer on here. You can play around with the strengths if you want, but I'm gonna leave everything at default. Then I'm gonna hit add because I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna go over to dunes. And I'm gonna add some dunes here. And so this is the smooth dunes, but the ones that I want are the wavy dunes. I like the way that it puts the waves in there and everything. So I'm gonna leave these at default as well. I feel like these look pretty good. So we're going to go and click add in the bottom right here. And now I'm going to come back to basic erosion. And actually, let me see what advanced erosion has in it. I like the way that talus simulation looked. So if I click on that, you can see we're starting to get it smoothed out along the top ridge here. So we have wavy all the way until we come to the top here. And then yeah, I'm just going to click, oops, let me add that again, talus, hit add and close. There we go. So I want to move my talus all the way to the right, take my wind, move this to the left. So I'm over here in the right hand corner, so I want to have my wind, my wavy dunes, and then my talus simulation to get my dunes the way they're looking right here. Okay, so from here, like for wavy dunes, if we want, we can make this convex. And if I click on my mask button over here, you can kind of see how everything's being affected. So let me click back to none. And you can see that the wavy dunes is affecting the whole thing because it's all red. So if I come over to convex, that means it's only affecting the top parts here. But if I go to concave, then it's going to start manipulating the sides. Which, no, I think I'm just going to stick with none, have it across everything. But for my talus simulation, let's come down, we can make this concave so that it kind of goes within the grooves there on the sides. And this is all about playing with the attributes here on the right hand side. I can also do a slope select, so it starts affecting the slopes and everything here. I could change my slope range, do something like that. As you can see, this is a very powerful program. You get all types of cool masks and everything to work with here. So what I'm going to do from here, I'm going to toggle off my mask there. I'm liking the way everything is looking here. If I scroll all the way down to the ground and actually hold W, just like a video game, you can hold WASD and just kind of control it like you would a video game. So you can actually walk along the dunes and see how large they are, which is pretty cool. They'll just be inside your landscape here. But let me scroll out a little bit, because now we're going to add some textures. And I'm going to add textures basically just for a basic layout of how I want everything to look, because I'm going to bring everything in the mixer next, and then I'm going to actually lay out my real textures with mixture. And so let's just come over to textures, add layer, and click add. And over here I'm going to click under directories, World Creator. I'm just going to add this desert one, click add. And then I'm going to scroll down again to, let's say, sand, click add. And then there's another sand here, and I'm just going to click add and close. So now let me turn off these sands here. And so my basic sand is basically going to be across all my dunes, and then my secondary sand, I want to under cavity here, I want to pick convex, and that's going to make sure that I have a mask going along the top of my dunes here that are kind of smoothed out. And so that's going to be a mask that we're going to be able to actually export. And so if you want to mess around with the smoothness and stuff like that, actually that's for the texture. Let me come down here, mess with the steps. So if I mess with the steps, everything that's light brown here, that's what our mask is going to be when we output. So you could bring up the strength a little bit if we want. Just kind of really get this blended in here. Then on my third texture here, I'm going to select that. And then instead of convex, I'm going to click on concave. No. Let me click on convex. No, I don't want that. So let me actually do this. Let me do slope select. Doesn't look like that's doing anything as well. Let me bring up the range. There we go. So I just had to bring up my range, but I don't know if it's coming across on the computer as well, but you can see. So we'll have 3 mask section here. So we have the light brown, and then we have it blended into our lighter, I guess, grayish sand, and then we'll have a mask that goes along the dunes up here. So the next step will be to export all this stuff. Oh yeah, one more thing. Before we start exporting our textures, we want to come over here on our right hand side under seamless properties. So this is on the very first one. If you go to surface base, we'll see seamless properties here. So we want to make sure we have the seamless X and the seamless Z clicked on. And what this is going to do is, if we want to have our dunes repeating in our texture, so if we just want to see like infinite dunes, this is what you want to click to be able to do that seamlessly. If we don't click on that, we might get some frayed edges once we get into the next step. So make sure you click that on. Now let's get into the exporting settings. So if I come up to my upper right hand corner, we'll have a button here for export. And under my terrain type, I want to do terrain height. And then instead of raw for format, I want to come down and do a PNG 16 and that will give us a PNG 16-bit. And then we're not doing a game engine, so we'll do none. So I'll just click export, and then I have to find where I want to save this file at. So come over to images, and underneath my file name for height map, I'm gonna just name this tutorial underscore height map. Click save, and you'll see over here we'll get a loading bar. We have our height map now. So underneath heat maps, we'll click on this, and then under filters, we want to click on textures. And as you can see, our 3 textures that we have that are a part of our dunes are selected here on the right. So I'm going to keep this as a PNG format, and I'm going to click export, and I'm going to rename this as tutorial underscore heat map. Click save on that, and give this a second to export our heat maps, and then I'll go into File Explorer to kind of show you guys what everything is looking like. So give this a few moments to export. All right, cool. So everything's exported. Let me open up my File Explorer, go to my images, and now you can see that we have a map for each one of those textures. So you'll have heat map, it will come out layer 0 default 0, layer 0 default 1. These are just the naming conventions from World Creator. And then we also have our 16-bit height map here. And so that's everything that I want to get out of World Creator. I basically just wanted to use it for its height map and to make masks. And so in the next part, we're going to open up Mixer and start building everything in Quixel Mixer. And so give me a second to set up, and we'll get right into it. What up, what up? All right, so we got Quixel Mixer open. We're in the latest version, 2019.1.4. And once again, shout out to Juan. He's the one that inspired me to even try to do this in Quixel Mixer, just seeing this stuff on Facebook. And so to get started, we're going to create a solid layer over here on the right. and you want to add your height map. But if you come down to the bottom right here next to my image, you can see once you click on the mask, it says masking is not yet implemented for first visible layer. And that's fine because we just need a base layer there. And we'll duplicate that by adding another solid. So now we can click on mask and we get this other box of attributes up here in the top right, which is add mask component. So if I click on this, come down to image, then click on my folder, now I'm able to add in my height map that I had from World Creator. So if I click on the one that says tutorial height map, click open. Now if I click on my solid layer and bring my threshold up, you can see our dunes are starting to extrude from the plane there. And these are the dunes that we made in World Creator. So I actually bring my threshold up to like 3. Here you go. So now we're seeing our dunes are in our scene. So now what's left is adding some of the textures from the Quixel Megascans library. And so now in my top left, if I click on local library, I have some sand textures that I already have downloaded. So I'm gonna click on sand. I'm gonna start with this one that says bright desert sand. Give it a second to click in. If you look in the bottom left, it would actually say loading textures, and this one has 7 textures that it needs to load in. And so it usually only takes a few moments for everything to kick in, and it looks like it's almost finished here. And there we go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a mask to this. So let me click on my add mask button here in the bottom right. Then click on my add mask component, click image. And we're going to start off by adding the heat map here. So once we add our bright sand here, you're going to see that it's only coming up in splotches on our dunes here. And that's because we need to bring our threshold up a little bit. And it's going to look really funky here. And that's fine because all we have to do is come over to wrap the base and we can see that our sand is starting to conform to our dunes here. So if I bring up my threshold up to 3, to match what our base is, now we have everything that we want in here, and we can actually bring up the repetitions here on the right a little bit. So let's say 16 by 16. That's going to smooth out our sand here. If we move in, we can see that we need to fill in some of these gray gaps. But next step, I'm going to go over to local library, and let me click on this one. This is sand debris. Give us a second to click in as well. And we're going to go through the same exact steps. So now I'm going to click on add my mask, image, click on my folder, and I'm going to bring in my second heat map here. So click open, and the same exact thing, bring up the threshold a little bit till we start to see it pop. Then we're going to wrap the base to conform everything. Then let's bring our threshold up to 3 to match everything else. Now you can see we have our other sand blended in with our original bright sand. And to blend this in a little bit more, I'm going to click on my bright sand, go over here to diffuse, and I'm actually going to copy my hex value. So I'm going to hit Control C to copy, then come up to my sand debris, click on its diffuse, and then I'm going to paste those values in there just to kind of blend it in a little bit more. And if I want, I can raise up the radius here on the right hand side just to kind of do some stuff to kind of blend everything in. That's what Mixer is all about, is blending in your textures. So now to finish it off, we're going to go back to local library. I'm going to come back over to this other sand debris, bring this in, give this a few moments to click in. Go through the same steps. Let's add a mask. And we're going to add in our last and final heat map here. So I'm going to click open. Bring up my threshold a little bit. We can see that it's blending in all those other gray areas. We're going to wrap to base. And there we go. And I can raise up my repetitions a tad bit on there just to kind of blend those in. Then I'm going to click on my diffuse again. I'm going to paste those color values. You can see we have some nice little splotches of the different color sands. Everything is blending in nicely except for on our peaks. We still see a little bit of gray, and that's because our solid here with the height map is gray. So that's an easy fix. We just click on diffuse, hit Control V, and there we go. Now it's the same color. Everything's blended in really well. Let me bring down my height maybe a little bit to like 2.8, just to let everything blend in a little bit more. And that's basically it for blending in all of our different sand textures here. And if you want to see what it looks like in different lighting conditions, you could just click on up here where it says Pisa. Let's see street lights. You could do overcast, see desert road. So it just gives you an idea what your material is going to look like in different lighting conditions. So I'm going to hit Control S to save it. So now for our final step in Mixer, I'm going to export to library. So from here, my name is going to be Dune Tutorial. My category, I'm actually going to make a new category. I'm going to just name this one Wimbush, so it'll be easy to find. Click OK. If you want to put in tags, you can. I'm just going to put in Wimbush, Dunes, and Tutorial. And what this is for, if you're looking for it in Bridge, if you type in any of these keywords, you should be able to find your textures. And if you're building a lot of textures, you'll probably want to do that. So now I'm just going to click Save. And again, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see that it's exporting our maps to the Bridge library. And then from there, we'll be able to export everything to Cinema 4D. And so give us a few seconds, finalize export. There we go. So now let's open up Bridge. There we go. So now that I have Bridge open, if I look on my left-hand side, if I click Mixer, I can see my Dunes tutorial material is in here. It's going to look a little bit funky. It's not going to look nice like the other Mixer materials, but that's okay, because we only want it for its end result anyway. So in our next step, we're going to be able to export this out to Cinema 4D. So give me a second, get Cinema 4D open, and I'll be right back. What up? Okay, so now we have Cinema 4D opened here. I started off by putting a plane in here. My plane has a width of 10,000, my height of 10,000, and then my width and height segments are 40 each. So now I'm come over to Bridge. If you remember before, we had sent our stuff from Quixel Mixer over to Bridge. So if I click on my mixer here, I have my dunes right here, and if I scroll down, I want to export at 4K to Cinema 4D. So I just click export here. You'll see it says export successful to Cinema 4D. Oh, you also want to make sure you have your plane selected here, because it's automatically going to give us a redshift tag and our material on here whenever we export from Quixel Bridge. But if you notice, our material is coming in gray. So if I click on my material and then I open my edit shader graph, for some reason it doesn't give me the diffuse color, which is fine. I mean, we'll have it in our folder. All I have to do is click on one of my materials here, go to general, and then locate image. And inside of here, wherever I exported all my materials at, I have my diffuse in here. So I could just drag my diffuse over, connected to my diffuse node, and there we go. And I can also bring over my ambient occlusion. I have an AO file here as well. So I'll just bring this in. Then I'm going to connect it to my diffuse, do adjustment, and do color multiplier. And there we have our AO over top of our diffuse now. So let me click that out. And then let me come over to my render view. I'll hit render on here. And you can see we have our material in, but everything is flat. That's because we need to raise our displacement levels. So inside my redshift tag here, let me move this over to the left. So inside my redshift tag, in my geometry, I want to click override, and then down here on displacement, I'm going to bump this up pretty high since my my plane is pretty large. So I'm gonna just go to like 1,000, see what this looks like. Okay, you see it raising up a little bit, and then for my displacement scale, I'm gonna bring this up to like 250, hit enter. See what this looks like here as it raises the terrain. And there we go. We have our raised terrain into the scene now. So it's easy as that to bring in your stuff from Mixer to Bridge to Cinema 4D. They made it real easy to be able to do that now. So now my next step is, actually let me close this out. And I'm just going to make a couple of copies of my plane. And if you remember in what's it called, in our program that we're using before, World Creator, we had made it so that we'd have seamless edges. So all we have to do now is drag some of these planes out, and if we connect them to the edges, I should actually put my snap on, enable snap. And I'm just going to drag these out to the very edges. And what I'm doing is I'm just making more planes for the background there. Now hold down Control and drag these down and make a couple more planes like so. And that should be good right there. Let's go into a render view. See what this looks like here. There, now we have infinite planes moving off into the distance. I can bring a couple of these planes in. Oops, they're not really connected, so I'm just going to do this quick and dirty. Oops. I should have locked it off up here, but it's okay. Just do another quick render now. And there we go. So we have our Doom planes falling off into a distance. You can do that as many times as you want. And so now it's time to do the lighting. So I'm gonna come back to my settings. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, before we bring in our material, you want to make sure your render is set under Redshift. If it's set under your standard, then the bridge is going to bring in standard materials. So if you have it clicked on Redshift, it's going to give you Redshift materials. So that's just a good tip to go by there. I'm going to drop my max levels or samples down just while I'm doing the lighting here. I'm going to turn these off. So now I'm going to first start with, let's do a physical sun. So I'm going to bring in the physical sunlight. And this should make our screen all black. Yeah, there we go. So now I'm just gonna change some of my attributes over here. Oh, sorry, I went to my P first. So if I bring this down, then we start to see the sun, and then we can come up to our H and start moving it around. So somewhere around there looks good. So yeah, whenever you bring in your physical sun, I forgot, I usually start with the P here and move it in a negative direction, and then you'll start to see your shadows and everything moving along the edges here. So now I want to come over and do, let's say, a dome light, so we can add an HDR for some of our fill. I also want to tell you guys about this website that I use called hdri.ca. It's a free HDR website where you can download HDR files. And so if you want to follow along with what I'm using here, I ended up using this one that's called 106 Field HDR, and they just started out. It looks like they have a couple of good HDR maps in here. So if you need some free maps for your collection, I definitely would say go and check these guys out. And so I have my dome light inside my scene now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that HDR that I was talking about, and I'm going to drag it into my path. Click no. Let this render out again. And so now we're starting to, I'm going to use my HDR just as a fill. I'm going to actually, if you click down into environments here, you can turn off your background and we can actually add an alpha channel. So what that does, that just adds a little bit of realistic feel into our scene. I can even bring down the exposure by maybe like -1. See what that does. Brings our shadows out a little bit more. Let's do -0.5. And there we go. So I'm pretty happy with that scene there. So yeah, it's a real easy setup. I just have a dome light, a physical sun, and then a couple of planes, and we have our scene already here. So the next step would be to render this out. So if you go into your settings here, I like to use brute force, and then for my secondary, I'm gonna use the point cloud, and then I'm just gonna bring this up back up to 256. And this is just a still, so that should be suffice for what we want to do for this tutorial. And so now we want to export our scene out to After Effects. And so you would just come into your settings here, get on to save, and then set up wherever you want to save it out to. I like using OpenEXR, and make sure you have the alpha channel clicked as well. And if you want to do something like add a depth of field matte, you also want to do your multi-pass image. If you don't know how to do that, you want to come over to your AOV manager and then just go over to depth and then click on your Z. And then I did a tutorial on this as well, but just as a recap, your depth mode would usually say Z. I usually go to Z normalized, and then if you look at your depth over here in your viewfinder, you'll get an image like this, and then you could use this in After Effects to do like depth of field or even use it as a fog layer. So the next step from here would just be to go into After Effects, do a little bit of compositing, add a sky to it, and then wrap it up from there. Okay, so now we have After Effects open. I brought my Dune EXR into my scene. So this is what you'll get. And I also rendered out a depth matte here. And so to get started, I'm just going to add simple levels to this. Nothing too crazy. Maybe bring in hue. Knock down the saturation just a tiny bit. Okay, like so. And then I'm gonna right click in my timeline here, hit adjustment layer, and let's add like a vignette. So I'm just gonna do stylized vignette since that's what comes with After Effects. Let's raise the amount so I can see what it's doing. Okay, so I'm gonna bring it just to the edges. Then I'm just going to lower the amount again, like so. So I just want a little bit on the edges. Okay, cool. So now I found this image of a sky online. If you want to Google it, it's like PD hashtag NA003982.jpg. It's just something I found free online. So I'm just going to bring this in just to about the point of the skyline. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit to fit the scene, like so. And then I'm going to make another adjustment layer, and I'll try to stick with the stuff that comes in After Effects. So you can use any lens flare. I'll use the one that comes with After Effects here. And actually I'll bring this over top of my dunes. Just put this off into the corner. Use the prime there, like so, just to add a little bit of detail into there. And then I also have this dust wave QuickTime. So I'm just gonna put this into the foreground just to add a little bit of dust. Oops, which one did I have? Here we go. So I copied and pasted that in. There we go. Just add a little bit of dust in there, like so. And then what else should we add? I guess that's pretty good for that. The main trick that I usually do is, so my file here is this Dune file. Let me bring this up to my comp, And I'm going to drag this down and make a composition within a composition. So if I hit Control D, I make a duplicate, and then if I come over to hue, knock down the hue on this, bring it all the way down, then let's just do a fast blur. Bring the fast blur up, make sure you hit repeat edge pixels. So we bring that up, and then I'm just going to add levels to this. Just kind of darken it down so we really get the contrast. And then in my mode here, if I click add, it kind of makes your image pop there. And so you want to bring down your opacity here. Just hit T on your keyboard. Just kind of play around with it there until you find something nice. Then I'm going to add another adjustment layer, maybe knock the hues back just a tad bit overall. So do another hue and saturation. Bring this in like so. And there you go. And so that's how I made my final image. I'll make sure to put this whole project file from World Creator, Mixer, Cinema 4D, and then the After Effects project if you would like. I'll put it up on Gumroad. Yeah, I should be able to put it up there for free if I keep the file size down. So keep a lookout for that, and thank you guys for watching. So that's basically it. This is just one technique, how you can go from World Creator to Quixel Mixer over to Cinema 4D with Redshift. There's other ways you could go about it too. You can actually bring in your Megascans material into World Creator directly, and then export from there. You can actually you can export an OBJ from World Creator to Cinema 4D along with the heat mask to blend your materials that way with Redshift. And so there's a whole plethora of ways you could go about this, of course. And so hopefully I could get to some of those videos in the future if you guys want to see those as well. So as always, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you guys are thinking, if you enjoyed this or if I should move on to something else. And as always, keep creating, and I appreciate the support. Thank you guys again. I'll see you next time.